As we move on from Christmas, the Carolina Hurricanes take on the Detroit Red Wings in a battle of 1 versus 2. Well, after it's all said and done, who's going to be on top of the Eastern Conference?
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes, as we are now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hot Girls, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On today's show, we're going to preview the number 1 versus the number 2 showdown in the Eastern Conference between the Hurricanes and the Red Wings. While they are tied for points, the Hurricanes have the edge in points percentage. Also going to look at the potential goalie matchups and the key line, or what the lines could look like in this game for the Hurricanes. And what could be the keys to the game as well for them to get their win and basically snap their 0-2-1 run. But before we jump into all that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So this is the first of 3 meetings between these two teams. Of course, this one's going to be in Carolina on Saturday, December 27th. Then it's January 12th in Detroit, and then February 28th back in Carolina. Game time on Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on FanDuel Sports South, and also on 99.9 The Fan with Micah Tripp on the calls. Detroit, 22-13-3. The Carolina Hurricanes, 22-11-3. And like I said, they're tied in points with both with 47, but the Hurricanes, having 2 games in hand, have the points percentage. So in reality, that's why they are technically the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Over the last 5 games, in terms of points, goals, and assists for each team, Mort Seider, 7 points, Dylan Larkin, 3 goals, Lucas Raymond, 6 assists. For the Hurricanes, Andrei Svechnikov, 4 assists, 6 points, and then Sebastian Aho with 4 goals. Over the last 10 games, Carolina, 6-3-1. They are on that 3-game losing streak with their 0-2-1 with the shield loss to Florida and then the back-to-back regulation losses against Tampa and Florida, and before they had a 5-game winning streak. Red Wings 8-2-0 in their last 10. They're on a 3-game winning streak, beating Washington twice and also Dallas, with the last 2 games against Washington and the Stars both coming in overtime. Now, looking at the tail of the tape, who's got the edge of 5-on-5, power play, stuff like that? 5-on-5, it is Carolina. 6 goals for. They're 6 in goals for per game at 3.25, while they're 12th in goals allowed at 2.89. Of course, it went from right around 8-9 to 12 with their most recent run against Florida. Detroit, 14th in goals for at 3.11, while they are 20th in the league at 3.16 in goals allowed. So when you look at how that works out, if the Hurricanes manage to beat either John Gibson or Cam Talbot, however that works out, the Hurricanes are a better 5-on-5 team, and I think just while we've seen the last few games of not some great 5-on-5 play, overall for the Hurricanes this season, they have been a better 5-on-5 team. It's just some weird stretch they went on, but I think with the break and just kind of having a mental reset, I think the Hurricanes will have a bounce back. And like I said, this is a team that's been good 5-on-5 all season, outside maybe a couple games where it just kind of went sideways. I think with where Rod Brind'Amour has his team going, I think the mindset will flip back into the Hurricanes' favor of shutting things down 5-on-5, being able to close out games and capturing a win to snap the losing streak. Now, when it comes to special teams, Detroit, 8th in the league in power plays at 24.8. The Hurricanes are now 24th at 16.8, so they have progressed better in the right direction, getting closer to that 20 mark, so at least they're going to be closer to the top 20. Still a little bit to go, but they at least are on a good trajectory of not being dead last. They are on their way up. Penalty kill, Hurricanes 81.4, which is 13th, compared to Detroit at 80.4, who's in 18th. So the Hurricanes, who were in the mid to low 20s, are starting to creep closer to the top 10 on the penalty kill, which is what we're kind of used to seeing from this team. So I would say it's about maybe a small edge to Detroit just because of the fact that their power play is top 10, while the Hurricanes are still kind of 13th, 14th in penalty kill power play compared to 8th and 18th for Detroit. So I'd give the Wings a little bit of an edge, but I think it's a lot closer. I think with the Hurricanes, how they've been playing a lot recently, talking like 9 power play goals in their last 11 games, I think the Hurricanes are on the right direction of making that happen. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out between these two teams. And, when you look at the Detroit Red Wings, guys to watch out for, Lucas Raymond, 11 goals, 41 points in 36 games. Alex DeBrincat, 40 points in 38. Dylan Larkin, 36 and 38. Patrick Kane, even, when he's healthy, and then whenever he comes back, 24 and 28. So you have the Raymond, DeBrincat, Larkin group who are kind of just buzzing right now for Detroit, where they're almost either at a point, very close to point per game, or over a point per game. Especially Lucas Raymond, 30 assists already in 36 games, which is crazy to think about. Defensively for Detroit, Moritz Seider, 29 points in 38 games, 23 assists, plus 13. That is the best on the entire Red Wings defensive core. Evanson, plus 7. Ben Sherratt, plus 1. Everyone else is in the negative, especially with, some guys going into the minus 11, minus 14 range. Hurricanes, we all know, unfortunately, we don't have Seth Jarvis still. He's still going to be out for week to week still. But Sebastian Aho, 32 points in 36 games. Nikolai Ehlers, 24 points in 36. Andrei Svechnikov, 24 in 36. Jackson Blake, 22 points. And, of course, defensively, Shane Gostisbehere, 26 points in 27 games. Condra Miller and those guys, 13. Alexander Nikishin, what a season for him. Plus 13, best on the entire defense, and he's been playing some really good hockey. So when you look at the tail of the tape and kind of what you're seeing with where the Hurricanes are stacking up in the Eastern Conference in the league, 5-on-5, they are a really good team. They are very much a top 10, almost top 5 team. When it comes to 5-on-5, special teams has gotten better over the last couple weeks. And I think just that switch of some of the things they fixed on the power play, and with the penalty kill kind of being able to lock it in a little bit more, I think you're kind of slowly seeing the Carolina Hurricanes that they should have been this year kind of getting into that. I know last 3 games have been really a weird shift of like what's going on, but I think overall when you look at this team, you're seeing what they were supposed to be doing. It's just taken a little bit with, to get to this point, just with the injuries, roster shakeups, stuff like that. And it's been a weird season for the Carolina Hurricanes overall, but they are a team that's first in the East, first in their division, top 5 in the league. So even with all this weird adversity that the team has been going through, they're still finding ways to get the job done. I think that's where, with this small bump in the road that the Hurricanes have been facing, I think this is where that a winter break like this, it's a mental reset for the guys, get them to, just take a break and then kind of reflect on what's going on and then just get back at it. So I think the fact that you're at home, it's a 7 p.m. game. Hopefully, the vibes are a little bit, vibes are higher at the Lenovo Center on Saturday night, and we just see how it works out for the Carolina Hurricanes at that point. But I think for me, this is a team that can turn it around, get the job done, and just figure it out. And Detroit's on a run right now, so it's going to be a good, matchup between these two teams, because if this, keeps running like it is, we could see Detroit back in the playoffs for the first time in a while, and, number 1 in the Atlantic. Hurricanes could be looking at potentially the number 1 in the Metro. So it's a fun matchup. This is a fun early, 1-2 in the Eastern Conference between these two teams. And it's crazy thing too, like there was battles that the Hurricanes have faced in Detroit, and we're talking playoffs before, they came over to the Eastern Conference. So it's a good little test to see, you got an original 6, you got, the Hurricanes doing what they've been doing over the last few years. Should be a really fun battle for bragging rights to get the number 1 seed in the East, as both of these teams are tied coming into this game. So it'll be fun to see who's going to claim the number 1 spot. Now, we talked about the preview overall, last 10, last 5 games, stuff like that. What does the tape say about who's got the advantage and stuff like that? But let's talk about potential goalie matchups and the lines for at least the Carolina Hurricanes side of things. So stick around. We'll talk about that here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. The receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. And it keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On Hurricanes compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. And it's an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Discord server, which includes group chats for listeners of the show and be able to hang out with the host whenever and talk about the games in shows and what more, anything else you guys want to be able to talk about with actual hosts from the network. So go check out the link in the show notes to learn more and be able to sign up today to join our Everydayers Club. Now, welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So now let's jump into possible goalie matches for this game. The Detroit Red Wings, while 22-13-3, are in a very interesting spot when it comes to their goaltending. John Gibson, 12-7-1, has a 3.01 goals against, an .891 save, and 2 shutouts, while Cam Talbot, 10-6-2, with a 3 goals against average and an .887. Now, I know you're thinking to yourselves, how are the Red Wings 22-13-3, tied in points in the Eastern Conference with goalies sub 900 in the saves and having over 3 goals a game? It's pretty easy to do when you're shooting the lights out of the place and beating teams and keeping winning close battles. Like I said, they're 8-2 in their last 10, but it's a lot of games where they're just scoring at a ridiculous rate and finding ways to narrowly win games by 1 goal and stuff like that. So that's kind of where you look at Detroit, and the Hurricanes are the 6th in goals for. If the Hurricane, and they average 3.25s a game. If the Hurricanes get the John Gibson or Cam Talbot and just really shut the door in their own crease, I think this is a game where the Hurricanes can go, if they play the full 6 like we know they should be, this is a game where you can snap the losing streak, have a hold on the first place spot in the Eastern Conference, because you have 2 goalies that you could beat. Like I said, sub 900 saves, averaging over 3 goals a game. There's really no excuse for the Hurricanes not to go and win this game with how that goaltending is. So I have a feeling if no matter who they're going to throw in net, because with everyone having the 3 days off, all the goalies are going to be fresh. So it just depends on who Detroit's going to roll with. Is it Gibson or is it Talbot? But the Hurricanes have a way to get things done if they manage to come out in this game and really take control of it and beat either one of these 2 goalies. It's just what avenue do you go down with that? Now, in terms of the Carolina Hurricanes with goaltending, last game, I really want to put that on Freddie. It was just a complete, total team meltdown for the last one against Florida. So I can't really play a lot of blame on Freddie. Maybe 1 goal, maybe 2 at the most. But I'm very curious to see if they're going to go back with Freddie again in net, because he is still currently on a run where he's lost 7 games in a row, and in his last 4 have all come in regulation. And every save percentage is .850 or worse. Like 773 in that game against Florida. And like I said, on a 4-game losing streak, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting if the Hurricanes go back to him, because he didn't play for 20 days in between his last start on December 4th and the one against Florida on the 23rd. So I'll be curious to see if they go back to Freddie Anderson. But, Pierre Kochetkov, 6-2, .899 save, a 233 goals against average. Had that weird game against Tampa where they were up and then just kind of got a little sideways on them. But Brandon Bussey, 11-1-1, a 913 save and a 2.11 goals against average. Of course, saw his game kind of get lost in that shootout loss to the Florida Panthers to kind of start this 3-game run that they've been on. But I can see the Hurricanes going to Peter Kochetkov because they want to get him some more reps because he's only played in 9 games. He's played 490 minutes and 9 seconds of time on ice compared to Brandon Bussey, who's done 797 minutes and 37 seconds. I could see them going either way with Kochetkov or Bussey. I think that Bussey probably should be the guy just because he's really solidified himself into a spot where you're 11-1-1. You have the only 900 save percentage or better, and you're 2.1 goals against. And that last game against Florida, the first one of the two, I wouldn't even say that was on him. That's just the overall how just everything compounded on top of each other of how that game went. He should be honestly 12-1. His goals against should be under 2. But I think just where he's at, I think that's why it makes sense for me to go with Brandon Bussey in this game because he has shown time and time again where he has been the hot hand for the Hurricanes and kept them in a lot of games. When you look at a goaltender who points-wise has gotten you 23 out of a possible 24, or just 23 out of really 24 points that he should have, that's still a pretty good spot to be in. So I think for me, Brandon Bussey should be the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Hurricanes go with Kochetkov. But you can't go wrong with Kochetkov either. So either one of those 2 goalies would be good. Do I go with Freddie? I'd say no, and it's not fully on him just because of the support that he's gotten from the guys in front of him. But at the same time, it's like you've got 2 goalies who are playing better hockey right now. That I think that if you want to snap a losing streak, one of those 2 guys might be it. Now, in terms of the lines for the Hurricanes, we haven't really had any updates yet on if William Carrier is no longer sick. Will Jordan Martinook be back? I'm not really sure how it works out because as of right now, lines could be Ehlers, Aho, Blake with Svechnikov, Stahl, Stankoven, Robinson, Jankowski, Hall, and then it's that 2/3 of a line of Kokoniemi and Bradley Nadeau. Defensively, Miller, Walker, Gostisbehere, Chatfield, Nikishin, Nystrom, with Mike Riley as your 7th defenseman. Now, let's say you do get a William Carrier back. I think Mike Riley drops as the healthy extra. The original 6, guys on the defense, like I said, of Miller, Walker, Ghost, Chatty, Nikishin, Nystrom. I think that's the 6 you roll with on the defense. Those would be your pairings. And then I would say if you do bring Carrier back, I think Carrier would slot onto that 4th line with just Barry Kokoniemi and Bradley Nadeau because I think that's just a logical spot to have him in because you have Stahl on your second line center with Svech and Stankoven on your wings. I don't think that the Hurricanes would really want to break that up. And do you move Jankowski to the second line? Do you move the rest of the guys down the lines? Especially with Martinook not back, I just don't think the Hurricanes would want to try to do some basically kind of readjust the center core to get Stahl and Carey back together and then having to figure it out from there. I mean they potentially could if they want to put Jankowski on the 4th line, put Stahl on the 3rd, and bring just Kokoniemi back up to the 2nd line and be with Svech and Stankoven, and that is a possibility. But we know that Robinson, Hall, Jankowski have been playing really well together, so I don't think that Rod and the Hurricanes really want to break those 3 up with how they're playing. So I think even without Martinook back, I still think even putting Carey with Kokoniemi and Nadeau adds a little bit of extra oomph to that line. You got the rookie in Nadeau, very small amount of games played. Just Barry's back in the lineup after being a healthy scratch. I think just a Carrier, Kokoniemi, and Nadeau line probably be the way to go. Now, if we do get Martinook back, then it really changes things of how you kind of roll with these lines. Because then, who do you put on the second line? Then you have Stahl, Carey, and Martinook back together. Who's the healthy extra and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what those lines will look like if you get Carrier and Martinook back in the same game. It just really depends because, like I said, we've had no really updates, and we're not going to get anything until Saturday. So when you guys hear this on Friday, we're still kind of in that limbo of how would these lines possibly look like. So if it's just Carrier, I think it's going to be Carrier with Kotkaniemi and Nadeau and kind of just roll with that top 9 the way it is. And then Mike Riley is just your extra healthy defenseman. But if you get Carey Martinook back, then it's who's your healthy extra. You kind of roll from there and figure out who your 2C is and, all that stuff. So it'll be very interesting to see who's going to be back when. I know Jarvis and Slavin aren't going to be back, so unfortunately that's kind of where we're at now. But only time will tell. I'm curious to see how it works on Saturday before the game against Detroit. If there's a morning skate or practice, we kind of get an idea of what's going on with all of that. So that being said, those are the lines, potential goalie matchups. What are the keys of the game for the Carolina Hurricanes to win this game? Well, stick around and we'll talk about that here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked on Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, when it comes to the keys to the game, I mean, it's almost a little simple. I wouldn't say simple as it should happen, but I think it's just, we're not going to overcomplicate this. We're not going to galaxy brain an easy solution with some complicated nonsense of how to make it work. It's just, don't blow third period leads. Mike and Tripp said on the broadcast, a game is 60 minutes, and the Hurricanes have not played 60 minutes of hockey over the last 3 games. And that's the thing that Rod Brindamore was surprised about. It's like, we've never really had this issue of not closing out games and just leaking in goals that led to losses that should have been wins. So for the Hurricanes, I know it's easy to say, but it's like, just play 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey. We've seen this team do it this season. We've seen them do it in past seasons of just playing a complete game. Keep your foot on the gas. Don't let up, because the Hurricanes have let off the gas, and that's why you see teams just take control of the ice, where they've gone from like 7-8 shots in the first 2 periods to have 15-16 shots in the third, because they were able to play their game and kind of control the tempo. So for the Hurricanes, it's just keeping the foot on the gas and don't let the other team back into the game. If you're up by 2 goals or more, step on their throat and keep going. Like, there's no reason why those teams should be finding their way back into a game. So if the Hurricanes want to break this cycle of consistently losing and then stuff like that, it's play your game 60 minutes, control the tempo, play Hurricanes hockey that we know that they've done. And I think that's kind of the way to go about it. Just, don't have defensive breakdowns where you're puck watching and, a guy is able to sneak behind you, or, just have defensive lapses where you're getting boxed out, or just finding ways for the other team to find the holes that are needed if you're able to just pinch at the right time or get your read down, or just not have a defensive breakdown, and just being able to give goalie support. Like, that's what really has happened, because the goalies have been really left out to dry. Out of the 3 games, because you're talking the shootout, the 4-3 game against Florida, it's a shootout point in the terms of a goal to make it a 4-3, but you give up 3 normal goals in the game. You gave up 6 to Tampa, and you gave up 5 to Florida. I would say out of those games where you've given up 14 goals, essentially, maybe 2, maybe 3 would have been on the goalies out of that total of 3 games. That's more of a just defensive breakdown, bad turnovers, bad reads. Just, it's got to make life easier for your goalies. Don't make them have to do 10-bell high-grade saves almost every single time, because there's just guys finding lanes, causing turnovers, just being able to beat guys to the net. That's the thing for the Hurricanes, is if you lock it in, lock it down, there's a way that the fact of the Hurricanes on defensively can stop these turnovers, stop these crazy plays where teams are just taking advantage and 2-on-1s and, getting the high danger chances and the high slots and stuff like that. Just being able to limit the mistakes, I think that's what's going to help the Hurricanes, of not exposing their goalies to just high grade chances for the opposition. So I think for the Hurricanes, this is just a game of playing what you're supposed to be playing for 60 minutes. And I think that's just a kind of simple way of going about it. It's just control the tempo, play your game like you're supposed to, because you're back at Lenovo Center. Like, I've never seen that place get that empty in a long time and that dead silent. I don't think you want to do that again for another game where you lost going into the winter break, and you don't really come out of the winter break either with another loss like that, because you thrive on the fan base at the Lenovo Center. You know they want to be loud in this one, so I think this is where you kind of have to flip the script of what's been going on over the last few games and really get that crowd going. Because if you get them going, I think this is where the snowball effect starts to take over for the Hurricanes, where they're stacking the wins back, because that's what you need right now. Yeah, you got a lot of points early and you had a lead, but now you're coming up to 2026. We're talking like World Juniors started. Like, we're at that point in the season when World Juniors are starting. Then this is like, okay, we're getting really close to the halfway point of the season. There's a lot of pickup needs to happen. So this is just a game of controlling the tempo, playing your game for 60 minutes, defensively read better, get the, better passes, just playing a structured game that the Hurricanes can play. And I think that's pretty simple. Like, we're not talking about lemon penalties or, doing this, that, and the other. It's just play a complete 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey and get the job done and do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's what it just needs to be. Don't leave your goalies to dry. Play your game and just thrive on the Lenovo Center energy and get back into the win column. Like I said, we're not going to galaxy brain it. We're not going to make this complicated. It's just play 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey. And I think that's a way you're going to get back into this game. Or not even get back into the game, but control the tempo and stuff like that and make sure you get a win. Because right now you definitely need a win. You definitely need a win, especially the fact, too, on top of that, you're talking about the number one spot in the Eastern Conference. You want to be able to take that spot, play the second wild card team, have home ice advantage through the playoffs, because that's the thing you would really love to have, is to be able to be that team throughout the playoffs to control the tempo and do what you need to do over there. So it should be very interesting for the Carolina Hurricanes. I know it's been a weird 3 games for them being where they're at, but hopefully this winter break kind of helps and that we start seeing the team going back in the right direction of getting the wins, limiting mistakes, playing 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey, and then just kind of building on their Metro points lead, points in the Eastern Conference, go for the number 1 seed in the East, and being a top 5 team in the league. Because this team has shown they can do that with the adversity that they've been going through. Once everyone's back healthy again, and hopefully knock on wood, no more injuries happen, I think we'll finally see the Hurricanes roll into the team that we all think they should be as we were all thought they were going to be heading into the season. So, like I said, this episode is out on Friday. We're still waiting for a lot of news to happen between now and Saturday because of the fact that the team's on the break. So, we'll get like possibly morning skates, the practice, some news updates if guys are healthy, stuff like that. So this is kind of like an early preview of Saturday's game that's going to happen tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get some news, at some point tomorrow where everything happens. Of course, the Carolina Hurricanes play on Saturday night against the Detroit Red Wings. But until then, guys, this is the Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. If you need a last-minute holiday gift, or someone keeps asking what you want, make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of the show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through the link in the show notes below or in the description if you're on YouTube. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen to NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm a one-share Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at the Zachary Martin. Or if you click the link in my bio, you can find all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcasts, it's the Search Cast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up so let me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone had a great Christmas. Hopefully everyone got really cool Carolina Hurricanes gifts or just gifts in general. But also, make sure to have a great weekend and have fun watching your Hurricanes on Saturday night against the Detroit Red Wings as they battle for the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But until next time, as always, let's go Canes.